Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So Stephen Miller, the real brains behind MAGA and Project 2025, officially the Deputy Chief of Staff to Trump, he was being interviewed and touched on the notion of presidential authority. Then, as he was talking, he suddenly stopped himself dead. He'd said the quiet part out loud and had no idea how to proceed, so he just froze, like a rabbit caught in headlights. So how bad a slip was this? And what does it mean for American democracy? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So Stephen Miller was being asked about a judge blocking a deployment of National Guard. This is what he had to say.
You've called the district judge's ruling blocking the deployment of National Guard in Oregon legal insurrection. Does the administration still plan to abide by that ruling?
Well, the administration filed an appeal this morning with the Ninth Circuit. I would note the administration won an identical case in the Ninth Circuit just a few months ago with respect to the federalizing of the California National Guard.
This isn't true, by the way. The US government has not won an identical case at all. He's referring to the fact the US administration appeared to win an injunction. So basically they got a delay on an order, not a ruling in their favour. But never mind that. This was not the main point of interest here.
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
Stephen? Stephen? Hey, Stephen, can you hear me? It seemed, Stephen, I apologize. It seems like we're having a technical issue. We'll try to fix that and get back to you after a quick break.
I mean, look at that. There was no technical difficulty, of course. The programme was still broadcasting Miller. He just froze. A technical difficulty would have been Miller not here in the studio, in which case he would have just carried on talking and he wouldn't have heard the next question. He would have finished his statement and then just stood there like a lemon. Or his own audio not being picked up, in which case we would have seen his mouth flapping but no sound. No. He'd said the quiet part out loud, hesitated, bricked it, and then just decided he wasn't smart enough to style it out. So he just decided to play a game of statues. If I don't move, they can't see me. As if CNN viewers are like raptors or something. But just what was so damaging about what he said?
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
If you're wondering what the problem was, you wouldn't be alone. To a teacher, plenary is the consolidation exercise you carry out at the end of a lesson. A more common meaning is when you get different teams together for a larger meeting. Neither of those definitions makes sense in the context of what Miller was saying, but there's another definition as well. Plenary also means unqualified or absolute. So Miller was saying that under Title 10 of the US Code, President Trump has unqualified or absolute power. Now, Trump has certainly claimed since January a lot of powers which are not his by right. Many of us have been saying that he's been behaving as if he was an absolute monarch since his inauguration. But Miller has now revealed that Trump's close team seem to believe that he actually can behave as if he genuinely were a king, rather than a democratically elected president with boundaries to his authority. Miller was arguing that states, the courts and even Congress could, to put it mildly, they're just there for show. He was suggesting that their input, their checks, their balances simply don't matter. Now, that's not how the framers of the Constitution drew it up. They were obsessed with preventing tyranny. They were breaking away from a monarchy, right? They were students of history. They were aware of how unchecked power had led to dictatorships time and again. So they deliberately fractured war powers into three distinct pieces. Congress funds the army and declares war. The president, as commander-in-chief, leads it. And crucially, the courts are there to decide when those lines get blurred or just outright crossed. Plenary authority in this context erases two of those branches of government with a single, seemingly innocuous word. It posits an executive so powerful it can bypass the legislature's funding authority and the judiciary's oversight, claiming an absolute right to act without limitation. This directly conflicts with the very essence of the constitutional intent, which is built on shared power, not absolute power.
Under Title 10 of the U.S. Code, the president has plenary authority.
That clip, incomplete as it was, rocketed across social media. And the reason it stuck, the reason it became an instant flashpoint is quite simple. See, it sounded like a king declaring the peasants would just have to comply. It resonates because deep down, Americans have this like deep-seated allergy to that kind of soundtrack. They're wired to resist the notion of absolute power, to question authority, to demand accountability. The idea of a president claiming total control, especially over domestic military deployment, taps into a primal fear of authoritarianism that is etched into their national psyche. It wasn't just lawyers who understood the implications. It was anyone who understood the basic premise of American democracy. That is why Miller froze. You might imagine he wouldn't care because Trump's supporters will back him no matter what because they think he's on their side. They've already shown that they will be willing to excuse any number of abuses because they think he's fighting for them. And who cares what the rest think, because even Trump has openly said he doesn't want to do anything for anyone who opposes him. He is openly not a president for all Americans. But there are some red lines. The Epstein files looks like being one, and maybe being ruled by a literal king is another. Here's the part Miller conveniently left out, the inconvenient truth that undercuts his entire argument. Under Title 10 of the US Code, the federal government can federalise a state's National Guard, but only under very specific, narrowly defined conditions. You're talking about situations like a state being in open rebellion, or if its laws have become utterly unenforceable due to insurrection. These aren't minor distinctions, they're critical legal thresholds. In 2020, when Trump tried to deploy federal agents and National Guard troops to cities like Portland during protests, two federal judges looked at the situation. They looked at the graffiti, the rowdy demonstrations, the property damage, and they unequivocally said, no, it doesn't meet the bar. They didn't see a rebellion, they saw protest. Yes, unruly protest, but protest. It wasn't a breakdown of civil order that warranted federal military intervention without state consent. So they slapped the administration with an injunction. Now, what does that mean in practical terms? It means the Constitution already has a firewall built into it, designed precisely to prevent this kind of overreach. And Miller's plenary authority claim, that was the battering ram designed to smash through that firewall. The courts in that previous instance held the line, demonstrating that presidential authority, while significant, is not unlimited and is always subject to judicial review. This legal pushback underscored that the president cannot unilaterally declare a situation dire enough to bypass state authority and constitutional safeguards. But that was then. What about now? Miller wasn't freelancing. This wasn't some off-the-cuff remark he hadn't thought through. He's been shopping this idea, this radical expansion of executive power, since 2016. Imagine a skeletal staff operating inside the West Wing, quietly drafting executive orders, not just any old orders. These are directives designed to lean heavily on the Insurrection Act. Combined with this dangerous notion of plenary authority, what's the goal? To empower a president to send troops into blue states without their consent. To what end? To seize voting machines, to park tanks outside counting centres, all under the guise of maintaining order or ensuring election integrity. The insidious beauty of the phrase plenary authority is its dullness. It sounds boring. We don't even know what it means without looking it up, right? It's academic, it's innocuous. It lacks the red meat rhetoric of stolen elections or fake news, which means TV hosts let it slide, thinking it's just some legal nicety. It's not anything that's going to get the punters watching. Another failure of the Democrats with their inability to frame Trump's excesses in a way which will get the media the clicks they crave. But that's the trick, isn't it? Boring words hide radioactive intent. It's about creating a legal sounding justification for actions that would fundamentally bypass established law and constitutional norms. And by trying to say it, he's trying to get the people to go, oh, well, if it's the law, it's fine. Because the people just think, you know, the founding fathers created this constitution to block executive overreach. Well, as long as it's all being complied with, as long as it's in the letter of the law, it's fine then, isn't it? But it's not. You know, he's talking about giving the president total unchecked control over domestic military deployment and other critical aspects of governance, well beyond what America's founders ever intended. And that is what got Miller to freeze. He realised he'd said that. But there is good news, the glimmer of hope. The remedy, the specific antidote to this plenary authority, is actually really simple, and it's sitting in Congress right now. All you have to do is tweak the Insurrection Act. You add one sentence. The sentence would read, the president's authority under this chapter is not plenary and shall be exercised only with the concurrence of the state's governor or a joint resolution of Congress. That would stop Trump in his tracks. That one sentence would stop it in its tracks. It would slam the door shut on any future attempts as well to unilaterally federalise the Guard or deploy federal forces without state consent, because then you'd need Congress to have to vote on it. This bill already exists. It has 30 co-sponsors. Obviously, that's not enough. Leaderships on both sides believe voters don't care about process stories or technical legalities, right? But this is an opportunity for opponents of Trump's power grab to raise the alarm on what's going on and make this small change, which will block Trump's attempt to sneak through grey areas of the law and constitution. Grey areas which never really made themselves known before, because no previous president, there's been some good ones and bad ones, but no previous president has been an intentional traitor to their own country. And they could use Miller's slip-up to fuel the campaign, but will they? This interview was a few days ago. I'm not seeing any sign of it, I'm afraid to say. But if Trump is to be stopped, people can't just sit tight for the midterms. For reasons I may discuss tomorrow, and there are some non-obvious ones, by the way, Trump doesn't want the midterms to take place properly. He's ramping up his use of National Guards. It's practice. He's not going in there just to cause trouble. This is practice for controlling the elections next year. The alarm needs to be raised now, because if anyone is thinking their constitution is protecting them, you need to realise constitutional law can only protect you if you protect it. But let me know what you think in the comments below. For more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.